From clinics to culture. In today's episode, we want to talk about why Guiding Star is not just one clinic and how the many things that we have chosen to take on at the Guiding Star Project contribute to reshaping the conversation on women's healthcare. That is what is coming up today on the Fearless Future podcast. Welcome to the Fearless Future podcast, where your hosts, Lisa Canning and Leah Jacobson, will explore what the world would look like if women didn't fear pregnancy. Through education, community, and healthcare solutions, Guiding Star Project strives to make this a reality at our physical centers across the United States. Join us. Leah Jacobson, how are you today?
I'm good. Good morning, Lisa Canning. How are you?
I'm freezing. It is frigid, but that's okay. This is going to be a great conversation. It's going to warm me right up. And it's one that I've wanted to have with you for a very long time, because Guiding Star does a lot of things, but it's by choice. It's very intentionally you have chosen the different initiatives to get involved in. But I'm really curious, and that's why I want to have this conversation, because I'm sure other people are curious about it as well. Guiding Star could have begun with one center and existed and grown and evolved as one center, but it hasn't been that way. It's been multiple centers in various cities. It has been books. It's been speaking engagements. It's been events like Women's Health Week. It's been lots of different things that have contributed to this conversation of reshaping women's healthcare. So I'm just excited to kind of pick your brain a little bit about that and just really help people understand why it's not limited, like why truly it's a clinic to culture, why the work at Guiding Star has not been limited to, for example, one single location. How does that sound? Are you up for this conversation?
Yeah. No, I had like about 15 million things like just go through my head as you were talking. I was like, ooh. So we're going to have a lot to talk about, I think.
Your brain, honestly, I wish I could see it. I have a picture of what it looks like. Like when you just said that, I know exactly in my visual. It's like, boing, 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 boing.
I know. I was like, ooh, this thing connects to this thing.
Keeping up with your brain, honestly, like it's been a year. I have been in this organization, in this role for a year. And I feel like I'm just I'm like hanging on still a little bit, trying to catch up to your brain because it's magnificent. All right. So I think it would be helpful to, again, go back. I tell the story, you've told the story many times, of that initial vision you had for Guiding Star. We talked about it on last week's podcast a little bit, but just for anyone who might not be familiar, you had this vision of Guiding Star in prayer one day in an adoration chapel. Flesh that out for us one more time.
Yeah, well, I had gone to adoration thinking that I knew what I was going to do with my life. I thought I was going to go back to nursing school. I had 2 little babies at that time, and I was trying to think, what do I want to do with my career? Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my career, and I wanted to serve the pro-life movement. Like, I wanted to serve this building of a culture of life. Like, I really wanted women to not be afraid of their natural bodies and of having babies. And so thought I was going to be a nurse midwife, went to adoration to ask the Lord's blessing. I had already been accepted to school. I was like buying textbooks, like set to go to school to become a nurse midwife. And in adoration, God simply just told me no. And so that was the first time I kind of paused and was like, okay, well then what do you want? Like, what should I do with my passion, my gifts, my skills, my experiences? Because at that point I already had, a small, like a little amount, like a small little, like growing library in my brain of experiences with women that I was getting really troubled about. This was before I was even a lactation consultant. This was really before I'd even worked in the women's healthcare system, but I had just been a campus minister and I'd been having babies myself and watching my friends. And I was getting really troubled by what women felt about their bodies. And so God transformed all of that kind of passion into this vision for Guiding Star. And the initial vision included 3 main components. And it was a natural fertility clinic, like natural family planning, fertility awareness services, and then a pregnancy resource center kind of on the other side of the building. That was like, I even think of them like in order, so it was like on one side was like fertility awareness stuff. On the other side was like pregnancy services. like a pregnancy care center would provide, support classes, material goods. And then right in the middle was an alternative birthing center. And when I say alternative birthing center, I mean out of the hospital, midwifery run birthing center. So that was always the vision from day one. And it always was going to be kind of, I hesitate to use this word, but it's probably the best word for it. A little bit more like crunchy, like a little bit more natural, that this is not mainstream medicine. This is a little alternative. This is like get to know your body, optimize your natural health. And so we were using words right at the very beginning, like natural law, like integrative health, like a co-op style setup. So it was just always a little bit alternative right from the very beginning.
So you could have started one center. And if I'm not mistaken, you did. So shortly after that vision, the very first Guiding Star happened, and it happened with you involved. Is that right?
Well, sort of. This was Duluth, Minnesota back in roughly 2007. And so anyone that was up in Duluth, hey guys, it was kind of really confusing. It was really hard to figure out who the partners were. It was really hard to kind of bring the two sides together because unbeknownst to me as a 25-year-old, young mom, I didn't realize just really kind of how at odds the birthing world in that city was with the pro-life community, and the suspicion from both sides on what the ideology was, like what the worldview was. And so it was not coming together easily in Duluth at all. And our initial project ended up kind of taking a sharp left turn at one point. And it actually became the organization that we had founded, Guiding Stars. Now it became a maternity home. After we accidentally founded a new pregnancy center. So it's like, it was not at all what I was trying to do. It kind of was like, oh, and now we have a new pregnancy center. Beautiful. That's not what we want. And then it was like, oh, now we have a maternity home. Great. So it never actually did in that city become a Guiding Star center. And that was kind of what led me to just put it out to the world. I was like, okay, maybe not this city, but I'm like, I have to believe someplace in the world that we have better understanding of the two sides of the movement. Can we bring this together? And sure enough, when we put it out there to the rest of the country, that's when other cities started to jump on board, and they had the right ingredients, but it still never became that three-part, with the birthing center in the middle, the fertility care, and the pregnancy center. It never became that until now. So, I mean, and I knew at the time, I knew it was ahead of its time. And I had a sense that it would be about 15 years of like hard work. Like I actually said that to one of my founding board members. I said, I think this is going to take about 15 years. Like, and I was judging like by the reactions in Duluth. And I remember, I'll never forget her response. She said, if this takes 15 years, I'm out of here. And I was like, oh, like I kind of expected to take 15 years. I don't know. So maybe God gave me some special grace there at the beginning to like slog through this long cultural change. But we're here now. It's 15 years later, and I think it's time. People are ready for it now.
So wild. So let's go back to when it did catch more of a national, fire. So what happened there? Like, why do you think, first of all, what did you do? Was it a speaking engagement? Was it a presentation? Like what did you do that other people seem to really understand it and get it and raise their hand saying, I want to bring this to my city?
Well, the very first thing we did in roughly 2010 to 2012, we began to form the national organization. So I moved out of Duluth. I moved to a small, tiny town, central Minnesota, about 100 miles away from Duluth. And that was where I kind of had that, like relaunch this feeling. Like Duluth had been a couple years now of like trying to get everyone to come to the table and form this thing. And it was just kind of going off all over in different directions, and a lot of strong passion, but it wasn't congealing to make what we wanted. And so after I moved out of Duluth and I got that like 30,000 foot view of it and said, no, this is what we're trying to create. It's different. We're not trying to just like replicate something that already exists. This is new and different. That I had the mental energy to start over in a sense, and founded the National Guiding Star Project. And we put up a website, and that's literally what it was. It was a social media with a website movement that began, and it started with a lot of blogging. It started with this amazing group of women that just were hearing me, and like I was just kind of putting out this vision of, can we do this? Like, this is what I want. Does anyone else want this? And people were like, me, that's what I want. Like, I want that for myself. I want that for my daughters. And it began to pick up speed by about 2012, 2014 or so. The online community was really growing. The website was catching traction. We were starting to have cities reach out to us and say, how do we do this? And then we were, as an organization, scrambling and saying, I don't know how you do this, but we're going to figure it out. You want to jump on board? Let's do it. Right around, I was starting to do quite a bit of speaking, like in local communities, and just getting local communities excited about it, and founding our first Guiding Star centers around the country. It was right around 2015, I think. I actually don't remember the year of it, but the first pro-life women's conference, I was asked to be like the opening keynote speaker alongside Saren Foster. And for anyone that doesn't know Saren, you need to like look her up and watch some of her stuff, because she's the president of a group called Feminists for Life. And they've been around, I think, even before Roe fell, or like even before Roe was even like instated, like right around 1972, roughly. And so their organization, you know, for 50 plus years has been holding like the feminist position of women deserve better than abortion. Abortion is a really poor solution for what women need. And so Saren and I got to give that keynote address together, where she really gave the history of the pro-life feminist thought. Like, this is what we believe as pro-life feminists. And then I got to like wrap it up and say, this is what the future looks like for a pro-life feminist movement. If we get this right, it looks like these type of comprehensive women's centers with this like holistic sort of feminism, where our bodies are not the problem. And after that talk, people started coming out of the woodwork. Like, I actually remember a few of our center directors that currently are in our centers. I remember them, like the very first time meeting them, walking out of the audience towards me after that talk and saying, I want to do this. Let's do it. And we're like, all right, let's figure it out. So, I mean, props to those women, because they're the ones that took it home to their communities and figured it out. It's just incredible.
I want to show, we have this really great graphic. And what I'm showing, if you're listening to this in auditory form, I want to invite you to go to givemn.org. And we are currently in early days of Give to the Max, which is a beautiful campaign that supports the work that we are doing. And the graphic that I'm showing is the evolution. So Guiding Star founded in 2012. And then, as you can see along the line, all of these different centers that open. So 2016, El Paso, 2016, Cedar Valley, Siouxland, 2016. So 16 was a huge year. Wakota in 2016. And then
It was
along
chaos. It was us trying to figure out what the heck we were doing. It was so amazing.
incredible. Along comes Marshalltown in 2019, and then Guiding Star Tampa in 2022. Southwest, it evolved in 2022. And then our brand new addition, which is Guiding Star Crosby, which we've just opened the doors to. And then, as you can see on this graphic, this new era of this center, including a birth center in Tampa. We are so excited for, you know, this new movement. But brings me back to this original question. And of course, you can go and learn more about what we're doing. It's a beautiful page here on the Give to the Max page, and the link for that is wherever you are listening or watching this. But I want to bring it back to you. So we could have opened a center, just one, and kind of arguably perfected the model, right? But as you shared, perhaps it was a little too, before its time. I think another really interesting thing about this, Leah, is that this was not necessarily your innate gifts, meaning it's not like you had run a birth center before.
No.
You were not even a midwife, like you were contemplating becoming a midwife. And it's interesting, as I reflect on it just this moment, a lot of people go into business because they have a skill themselves that they decide to leverage. But you almost went a very different way, in the sense that like you were harnessing other people's skills and bringing them together, which again, I think is just a testament to your ability to share this vision and share it really well to galvanize people to move. And so again, could have just started with one center, but instead you started speaking. You started getting people excited. You started iterating. Different centers came on board, as you saw there, that big wave in 2016. And you started to learn what this looks like, maybe where it doesn't. Like, so let's talk a little bit about how it evolved, especially in those 2016 ish period.
Well, yeah, like that's where we were innovating, figuring things out. And we had a board member on our national board, Mary, who was pretty incredible. She was our original national board was 4 women. It was me and 3 really good buddies, and one of them happened to work for Habitat for Humanity. And so a lot of our initial sort of structuring ended up kind of being based upon Habitat for Humanity's structure of their local affiliates. And so our original affiliate agreements were very similar to Habitat for Humanity's agreements with their local affiliates. So anyone who's familiar with that organization may know that there's an international Habitat for Humanity that's, kind of overseeing the use of the license and overseeing the use of like, this is what we do as Habitat for Humanity. And that's really what we decided at national. Okay, we will create kind of the brand and we will create kind of the worldview, what we do. And then it's up to you kind of on the ground to figure that out and implement it in your communities. And that's really how we've been operating for the last several years. So it became pretty, because it was evident from the very beginning that my gifts were going to be much more so in guiding people to understand what these centers do and what they should include, because it was very clear from day one that it was different. We were not creating something that already existed. And so there was always sort of a tendency for people on the ground to be like, oh yeah, I know what that is. I know how to do that. And then this is what we do. And they would kind of recreate, most of the time they tried to either recreate a pregnancy center or they would try to recreate like a fertility care clinic. But it was never right. It was never big enough. I guess it was never like broad enough. And so we were always kind of trying to like pull that out. And there were some centers, we did have some locations. So, that little graphic you shared, it's a nice little graphic, but it doesn't tell the whole story, because there were centers in there that we did start up and then we're like, this is not the right fit. And then they evolved and became something else. We accidentally founded another maternity home in Brazos Valley, Texas, which is still up and running to this day. So, hey there, Elizabeth House. We love the work you're doing, but it began as Guiding Star Brazos Valley and then kind of like turned. So there were communities where we didn't have a success in terms of starting a Guiding Star Center, but something else like became, was born out of our efforts. So I always just kind of, I'm like, the work of the Holy Spirit's amazing. Like God knows what he needs in these communities more than I do. And if he decides he wants a maternity home there, that's what happens. But that tended to happen quite often where they would say, oh, we know what this is. It's a maternity home. And it was always kind of that, like trying to pull back and say, no, that's a great service, but this, and it could include work with a maternity home. It could include those services, but this is what we really do. So worldview became a really important part of national, actually.
And so over the years, you've done many different things. You wrote the book, Holistic Feminism. You were involved with Lumen Press, the publishing of the Happy Girls Guide. We have the Cycle Show book currently under our roster of books. And then Women's Health Week, which launched last year at Franciscan University, and we look forward to bringing it back. All of these other initiatives, some people might look from the outside looking in being like, well, what do these have to do with women's healthcare? Again,
Yeah.
I pose that question because I think it's an interesting one, because I think people ask it sometimes like, well, why don't we just focus on the buildings? So
Yeah.
why is the worldview piece so important, Leah?
It's just critical, because it's really clear right now that women don't even understand ourselves what type of healthcare we deserve. We have to be convinced first that this is the standard of healthcare that we deserve. Like we've been living for 2 or 3 generations of women now with a definition of women's healthcare that's really suppressive, really destructive. It's normalizes altering our bodies. It's normalized abortion and contraception as these like rights that are protected, and it's between a doctor and a woman, and like the language of women's healthcare has just become so detached from the experience that most of us have as women living in female bodies. Like what we actually need and want to care for our bodies is not what's being given to us in the women's healthcare system. And so it's become pretty critical actually that we launch a campaign to define women's healthcare the way that we see it around the services that we're focused on providing, because we can have the best centers that are providing fertility awareness support and doing amazing childbirth and doing lactation care and all the things that we do. But if women don't even value those things because they don't even think they're important, no one's walking through the door. There's no demand for our services. So it's kind of creating the cultural demand first, in a sense.
And then vice versa, even if we have that demand, but there's no providers in which to send women to, or there is incomplete or disjointed. I think that's my favorite thing about Guiding Star, because when I came in, I was kind of like, in a lot of ways, it would be easier if we just, not just, but if we spoke, if we created videos, if we focused on books. In some ways, that would be easier. But what
Totally.
very convicted around, and where in this, this took some time for me to really understand, but where this is where I feel like I'm lockstep with your brilliant 5,000 synapses firing brain, but where I feel very lockstep, and a lot of people in our movement are very much lockstep with as well, is we have to then have a place to actually send the women to, and it can't just be the one place in northwestern wherever. It can't just be the
Yeah.
one place in the south, east of the country.
Yeah.
Imagine if there are places in every state where women can access care. I just think that's such an important thing to pause on. It's like, if we're creating this big worldview, but we don't have pro-life providers, if we're creating this big worldview, but we don't have the places where women can go truly for a one-stop experience, like where that true wraparound. I keep coming back to the, we're right the night before the election. This is a very big time in US history. And I keep coming back to the vice president debate where JD Vance spent a good 90 seconds, in my opinion, essentially describing Guiding Star. He talked about how we must have the kinds of services and the kinds of facilities where we can receive these women and
Mhm.
provide incredible care. And as he was talking, I was just like, this is a commercial for Guiding Star, like truly.
Yeah.
And so to have those buildings, to have that infrastructure, I think is very, very critical. It's like that's why I have become very convicted that you need both. Yes, we could have just created one building, one location. Um, but to have the creating the demand as
Yeah.
well as then here's the actual product we provide. Go tell us.
Okay, so I just want to, as you were talking, I was like, I'm going to pull this up because I kind of use this as a playbook, quite frankly. This is the autobiography of Margaret Sanger, and this is what she wrote about, her life and her beliefs, and it's really her worldview, and how she's brought her worldview to the world. And anyone who is familiar with Planned Parenthood and knows that they have locations all over, that they have millions of women every year walk through their doors to receive women's health services, which I would argue are not authentic women's health services. How she did it is really, in a sense, it should be a playbook and a guide for how we need to do it. And Margaret Sanger didn't start with a center, in every city on every street corner. Like, she started by clearly articulating what she believed women's healthcare should be. She created a vision of where women wanted to go, that, she literally walked door to door with pamphlets about birth control and said, this is what you deserve. You deserve this knowledge. You deserve to have this available to you. And she created a demand. It was grassroots women saying, yeah, why don't I have that? Like, I didn't know that was even a thing. Like, I need that. And so in a sense now, 100 years later, we're in the same position of going door to door and saying, you actually can naturally plan your fertility. You actually can tell with 99% or 100% accuracy when you are ovulating. Like, you have other options besides chemically castrating yourself. We can teach women these things, but they don't know that anymore. That information has been lost. So in a sense, it's kind of going back and doing it over again with the advances in healthcare information, medical information that we now have. They didn't have that information at that time. Like, birth control wasn't seen as superior to natural fertility awareness. There was no natural fertility awareness. They just sort of guessed. They didn't know. We know now. Like, we know better now. So we can do better now.
There was a commercial. I don't know if you got wind of it, Leah. It's been driving me crazy. if I'm not mistaken, some party, I don't know if it was the Democratic Party, but some party with a very opposite outlook on the world than us, issued a commercial where there's a couple having intercourse. It's a very, I was,
What are you watching?
this is for, if I'm not mistaken, this was for like television. You know, if I can find the link, it was, you know,
Dirty.
it was like,
or really beautiful, depending on how it's depicted.
Yes. So, you know, there's enough clothing where you could put this on TV, but it was very jarring and very graphic. Like, it's clearly that they're in the act. And then the guy says, the condom broke. And then she says, oh, almost flippantly, like, I'm not doing it justice in the tone because I didn't care to watch this over and over again. You know what I mean? But like, she just was like, oh, it's okay. I've got plan B in the medicine cabinet.
Yeah.
And it was just so, what struck me about it, I'll finish the story. It's really so bizarre. He goes into the medicine cabinet, takes out the plan B, closes the medicine cabinet, and then you see in the mirror a reflection of an old white man, I guess meant to represent, you know, an older, very conservative politician saying, no, you can't have that. Like, literally, the tone of voice was that sort of juvenile. And I have so many thoughts on this commercial. Number one, that somebody sat down and thought, this is going to be a great ad. You know, like, this is a great one. If I can find the link, I'll share it and put it in the notes after the fact. But number one, that somebody thought that this was going to be a great ad. Number two, it was almost childish, like in the way that they were portraying the conservative politician saying, no, you can't do this. But the thing that really like just got me the most was that in culture, we've gotten so far that there are no consequences to sex. Like, the gentleman in the thing, he says, I can't have a kid right now. So how can you, like, you know, prevent me from the thing that'll make sure I don't have a kid? And I just was like staring at the screen being like, I know how you can prevent not having a kid. Like, there's a lot of other ways you can prevent not having a kid. Like, how about not having sex in this?
Yeah, that's pretty much the biggest thing. Like, yeah, but there's a million other things you could do besides sex in this moment.
And so I just I think and that's why, again, I am so convicted about the work that we do, and why I think it has to be both this focus on the worldview and this focus on the actual healthcare we provide women. It's just that the culture has gone so far the other way that these discussions that have really important natural consequences, like it's a natural consequence of having sex that a baby may come. It doesn't happen every time, but it is a natural consequence of that act. And yet we have evolved in such a way in society that now that has become almost like flippant. It's become, and that's a problem.
Well, and it's something we think we can turn that switch on and off. Like, I think that, okay, the switch is off right now, but now I want a baby. Now I can switch it back on. And we have that assumption that on the other side that we can just have a baby whenever we want to. And it's a really just, I mean, I write about it in my book, but it's a sort of idea that we can dominate nature whenever we want without any consequence, and that we own Mother Nature. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, we do not control nature. The best we can do is respect and revere and cooperate with. And that's the type of healthcare that we're trying to provide to help you fully understand that we're cooperative with nature. We're not trying to dominate it. We're recognizing that fertility is a gift, and that it is something that we shouldn't just play with, and we shouldn't just toss it aside and pretend that we can just turn it back on later, because you can't. You can't always do that.
The other interesting thing, Leah, I think about you, and you know, feel free to dig into this as much or as little as you want, but some might say, oh, we should just call this like Catholic healthcare, just as an example, because of course the Catholic faith has so much in line with what we're trying to do here at Guiding Star, right? But you also chose to not hide, certainly, you know, like you talk about your own faith, and you talk about your own principles, of course. There's a lot of imagery in our brand that would, you know, indicate that there is a Judeo-Christian worldview in our brand. But that was also a very important distinction for you. Tell us a little bit about why being accessible was important. And maybe accessible is not the right word.
Well, I don't want this to be exclusive to Catholics. Like Catholics may decide that this is a great fit for them, but a lot of Catholics won't. A lot of Catholics don't appreciate the church's teachings. But this is really quite simply just nature cooperative. Like we're just looking at the reality of nature presented to us around us, observing it, which is available and accessible to anyone. Anyone can observe what is ordered around us, and you can come to conclusions about what's going to be good for the body, good for me, good for my soul, good for humanity, based upon very observable things. And I think a woman's body is one of the like loudest sort of like things in nature. It's speaking all the time. Like it's just got crazy like signals being sent out on this is what I want. This is what I want right now. And we've done such a terrible injustice to women by just silencing it, just shutting it down and being so quiet, like, no, you just get along over here. Like, don't upset the corporate structure. Like, and I think that that's not a religious thing. That's not a Catholic thing. Like, in fact, I think there are many Catholics that would prefer that we just sort of like, sometimes it can go the other way. It can swing super far the other way where, you should just be at the mercy of fertility, and like have as many babies as you can have. And that's actually not what we're saying either. We're saying like this, you have the power and the ability to decide, is this a good time for a baby? Do you want to welcome a baby into the situation right now? Well, okay, here's listening to your body, understanding the natural order of things, that nature is not something we trifle with, not something we play with, not something we try to subject to our own personal desires at this moment, that we cooperate with it. This is how you cooperate with nature to achieve your goals. And it's going to make you happy. It's going to make you really full.
Natural consequences or natural outcomes is, I think, a very important thing to focus on in this conversation that, again, I think society has basically abandoned. Yeah,
and it's not just fertility, because I think we tend to, like, they have done such an incredible job over the last 50 years of making us think that a baby is a consequence in a negative way, that this is a negative thing, like it's a bad thing. But there are also consequences to what we eat. There are also consequences to the chemicals we put in our body. There are consequences to our lifestyle choices and whether or not we exercise. So a consequence can be a really good thing. I chose to eat really well. I chose to detox and get my gut health all in place. And the consequence is that I feel awesome. Consequences, I feel great. So consequences are not negative things. They're just reality, being made real. It's just the reality evident to everyone.
And again, here's what I'm hoping, and let us know in the comments, let us know after the fact. You can connect with us on Instagram. Drop us a line anytime. But it's that connection between, we could just go and speak about it. We could just go onto campuses, and that would all be very good. And there are incredible groups. We have so many groups that we respect and admire, who that's what they feel they've been called as a movement. That's their particular charism. But where we have felt called, where you have clearly been called, and we as an organization in supporting your vision, is these two parts. Is that we want to have this conversation, but then we also want to direct you to this kind of care in action.
Yeah.
So,
and again, I pull her back up. Like, this is the only person, in a sense, that we have seen successfully do this in our country. In across the sea, they've got, Marie Stopes, but it's the same formula there as well. You have a worldview. You share it, you get people excited about it, you get people invested in that worldview, but then you actually have to make it. You have to actualize it in everyday life. And that is the centers, that is the locations, that's the worldview distribution sites. You can't have anything effectively change an entire cultural definition of a phrase without both the theory and then the practice.
Yeah. If you're listening to this and you're like, I get it, and I want this too. I want to change a culture, but then also provide the actual care. Can we invite you to visit our website, guidingstarproject.com/donate? and support us in our mission. Or if you feel so inclined, you can visit us at givemn.org/organization/the-guiding-star-project, or just search the Guiding Star Project at givemn.org, where you can support this vision that Leah had one day in prayer and make this a reality, not just in small pockets of the United States, but all over. Because again, let's maybe just close, or we can talk as long as you want, but I do think that this is an important element, that we're not just, for example, in your home state. Like that is an important thing. And when we talk to our centers, it's also what many of them feel makes us very unique, that we're not just a um, one centralized location, that we are trying to build a national movement. So when did that become clear to you, Leah, that a national movement was really important? Was it that time when you were talking about that conference, or was it other times?
Well, it was really, after I left Duluth, and it had been just so hard in Duluth. And I was like, why is this not working? Like, I thought, Lord, you kind of gave me this vision. And I, naively thought it would just be like, first time it would work. First time's a charm. And it was not. It was not first time's a charm. But I was not released, in a sense. Like, I didn't feel any peace being like, okay, that was nice. Now I'm done. I didn't feel that at all. I felt like, okay, well, now you've sort of crystallized what it's supposed to be. Now go do it someplace else. Like, go figure it out. And it was really there when we launched the website as this national, I wish I have the photo up on my computer. I wish I could share it with you, but it was really just this graphic. It was like a floor plan of a center, and realizing that this center could exist anywhere, that this was not just for my hometown, that really made it like, I really wanted to just let anybody who wanted to do it create it. Like, we said, this is what it should be. It should look like this. And we even were so funny, because the original one, I mean, we even put exactly like parking spaces. You need lots of parking. You need to be close to a bus line. Like, here's the drop-in child watch needs to be roughly right here. Like, here's the shared community center space. Here's the resource center. Back here are the birthing suites. Like, this is where the medical, and it showed really clearly how a woman could access the building for any one of these things and use the building only for that. But she could also just seamlessly be bounced around to get everything she needed all in one location. And that was just a universal experience of womanhood, of motherhood, of recognizing everyone needs this everywhere. This is not something that I just need in my community. Everyone needs this everywhere.
And we're so excited to be doing it with our own hands in Tampa. I really, I honestly, I just can't wait to we have the keys now, right? We're Monday, November 4th. We've received the keys. We will be starting a transformation on it. So please, stay close so that you can hear everything. December 3rd, we'll be having opportunity for those of you who are in the Tampa area or want to come to the Tampa area, come and take a look and check it out. I'm just so excited, Leah, to be able to, further, like, you've been doing this for 15 years and you've given your input to the physical centers, but this will be very different this time. You'll be able to really be consulted, to really be involved. I've been thinking so much about even just like, what does it feel like to walk in the door? What are our people smelling? Like, what is that scent they first, inhale when they come in? How are they greeted? What's their waiting room like? And it's just going to be so much fun to make
and honestly, it's so fun, Lisa, because we've been able to do this over the last, more than 10 years now. It's been, we've been creating these physical centers in these affiliate locations and consulting very closely with our local leadership on how they set up their centers. And so we've had the chance to kind of see what we like, what we don't like. Styles have evolved a little bit, but we committed long time ago, actually, to sort of this boho chic, mid-century modern look. And it's fun because it's really coming into style right now. It's really classic. And so it's really fun. We get to actually do it in our own center now. It's gonna be really great. But I do want to just give that shout out to our existing centers, because if you've been lucky enough to receive care at a Guiding Star center that's already up and running, you already know, like, in a sense, what this new center is going to be for the women in Tampa. And you can get really excited for what they're about to experience in Tampa. But it's going to be fun because we get to take it to the next level with the birthing services. We actually get to start delivering our babies on site. That referral that we've always made, like back and forth. Many of you have had care in centers. You've maybe gotten your ultrasound there. Maybe you did your fertility education. You've used the drop-in child watch, but then you've always had to go somewhere else to deliver. And no more. We're going to just be able to keep you right here, which has always been the dream, that the birth center anchors all of it in the center. So
if you are curious about our other centers, we did a series of podcasts. Just scroll back through, our previous podcast. We have done interviews with every single one, except for Tammy. We have not done Tammy yet, but almost every single one of our executive directors across the nation. You can learn their stories. You can learn what's unique about their centers. It really is. There are many stories that were shared in this series of the kind of care women experience and the communities that are built at these centers. Again, it's a unique thing that you've built. It's a unique thing you've said yes to and continue to say yes to, Leah. And we all just want to see your vision come to life. And so if you're like that too and want to help us come to life, you can look at the links in our show notes or wherever you're listening or watching to learn how you can be involved and have this come to reality. Leah, any final thoughts before we say goodbye today?
Oh gosh, I love talking about the worldview. The worldview is fun to talk about, and in COVID, I had that opportunity to pause and write the book. That really is our worldview, kind of our manifesto in a sense, holistic feminism. It's this idea that this isn't like a religious thing, like you mentioned earlier, it is kind of a feminist thing. It's a healthcare thing. It's a feminist thing. It's a woman's autonomy. It's a women's rights thing. And it's so timely at this exact moment, like you said, we're on the eve of the election here in the United States. And I think there's things from both political parties that make sense, that we're able to kind of pull the best out of each things and say, women need support. We need social services. We need help. But we don't necessarily need abortion to be the definition of our healthcare. We need more than that. And so it's this moment where we actually get to kind of imagine for the political parties and for the policymakers in our country, like what women's healthcare can be. And so we need as many people as possible to be educated on that, to be speaking that language, to be demanding that care. We're working really hard to create the grassroots demand. So far, no political party really matches us perfectly. So the more of you that can learn this language, walk into your doctor's office, walk into your politician's office, walk into your representative's office and say, this is what I want my taxpayer funding to go towards. This is what I think we deserve. Oh, that would be really helpful. We really would love to have you alongside us in this.
It's a revolution that we all can be a part of. So Leah, thank you again for yet another very invigorating. I'm all fired up now after this. And I just want to again invite, if you want to learn more about what we are doing here and how to bring this vision to life, how to make this come to reality in your community, Guiding Star Project, theguidingstarproject.com. Please come and visit us over there. All right, Leah, until next time, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the Fearless Future podcast.
Bye.